The government of Canada yesterday made a very major announcement about LMIA points in Express Entry. In this video, we're going to talk about that announcement. Before we get started, my name is Madhur Parashar. I'm a regulated Canadian immigration consultant. My contact information is on this video and in the description. If you need any help with your immigration applications, feel free to reach out for our paid immigration services. Now let's get into the announcement. Yesterday, Canada's Minister of Immigration, Mark Miller, made 4 major announcements. Out of that, the biggest, most significant announcement is that they are considering removing the 50 points you get for an LMIA from Express Entry. So first of all, let's get into the reason behind this. As we all know that the LMIA system has a lot of fraud and abuse and exploitation going on. We all know that there are bad actors, there are some employers who charge massive amounts of money to employees for sponsoring an LMIA so that they can get 50 points in Express Entry and get PR easily. Or they can file a work permit and they can remain in the country by extending their status. So there's a lot of abuse and exploitation and fraud going on in the name of these LMIAs. So the government has been trying to curb the fraud, reduce the fraud going on in the LMIA system for a while now. They've introduced so many rules around that, and the latest rule is that they have proposed is to remove the 50 points that is granted for an LMIA. If you remove the points for an LMIA, then there is no incentive for an applicant to pay anybody for 50 points for an LMIA, because it's not going to make any difference to their PR. I think it is very, very important to remember that this is a proposal or an announcement or a statement. This is not law yet. This is not a policy. This is not an official change or regulation yet. So that means that as of right now, you are still getting points in the Express Entry system for an LMIA or a LMIA-based job offer. So at some point, they have said that at some point these points will be removed. We don't know when that time will come. There will be an official regulation, official announcement, and it's not that easy to just remove the points. They'll have to change the Express Entry system. They'll have to make changes to their CRS score calculator, to the Express Entry eligibility, and all those systems. So this is not something that can be implemented overnight. It has been proposed. It'll get implemented whenever it gets implemented. We don't know that yet. So as of right now, LMIA points are still available. So is this a good news or a bad news? It depends on who you ask. Good news for a lot of candidates who are in the Express Entry pool who don't have LMIAs or who don't have sponsorship. People who are in the Express Entry pool with good education, with good experience and a good background, they are losing out to people who have less education or less work experience, but they somehow managed to get an employer sponsorship through an LMIA. So removing these points from these candidates will bring these two people to an equal footing, or the competition will be more fair, so to speak. So in general, this might be good news for people who don't have an LMIA. For people who have an LMIA, those who have, it is obviously bad news for them because the 50 points will be taken away. And people who have genuine employees, who have been sponsored by employers because they have genuine skills, because they fill critical roles within those organizations. This is bad news for both those genuine employees and for their employers who have gone through so much effort to sponsor these LMIAs in order to keep their employees. It is also bad news for the fraudulent people, or those who paid and bought and sold these LMIAs, but who cares? Who cares about them? It is good news that it is bad news for those people. Next point is implementation. How will this be implemented? Does this mean that going forward, LMIAs will not get any points, but people who already had LMIAs, they will continue to retain those 50 points? Or does this mean that everybody with an LMIA will lose 50 points? How will this be implemented? Again, we don't have an official rule or an announcement or a regulation, so we don't know. But in my opinion, everybody who has an LMIA, whether from before or in the future, will lose those points, and their points will reduce by 50 points, because it is impossible to give points to some people, but at the same time not give points for some other people. create a lot of chaos and confusion and complaints and even lawsuits if they did this kind of discrimination. So if this rule is implemented, it'll be implemented for everyone, and the LMI points might be taken away. Next point, impact on CRS scores. So a lot of people are thinking, or rather dreaming, that removing LMIA points is going to bring CRS scores crashing down all the way from 540 to 500 to 490, 480, 470. That is crazy. It's not going to happen. Cutoff scores for CRS are not going to come down below 500 because of this move. Why? Because a lot of people think that everyone who is above 500 has somehow got there because of LMIAs, because they've done some fraud or some shady work. But that is simply not true. People who have studied in Canada, people who have gained Canadian work experience, it's easy for those people to get above 500. There are hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of people who have come to Canada as temporary residents, who have studied here as international students, who have gained work experience here either through PGWP or spousal open work permit or any kind of work permit, have acquired Canadian work experience. Those people are above 500 points, and there are millions, there are tens of thousands of people who have gone through that route or are currently in the process of going through that route. They are in the process, they're in the school right now, they will get PGWP, they will acquire Canadian work experience. So the supply of people who are above 500 will continue at a very fast pace, and not everyone who is above 500 is there because they bought an LMIA. Over the long term, if big draws are held, then CRS scores might continue to come down, but removal of 50 points for LMIA alone will not cause CRS scores to drop to 490, 480, or not even below 500. That is my personal opinion. Now, is this a good decision by the government or a bad decision by the government? This is where things get a little controversial and a lot of debating starts. So I will express my personal opinion. Now, is this a good decision or a bad decision by the government? Now, this is where things get a little controversial and some debate starts. Now, most people don't have an LMIA, so they obviously think that it was a good decision because it benefits them. So there is some vested interest there. But taking a neutral perspective from what is good for the country or the immigration system or the labor market, from that perspective, I believe that this was a bad decision. Yes, there is fraud, but the way to solve that fraud is by identifying the fraudulent actors, punishing them, canceling their LMIAs, taking away their work permits, not by punishing everybody and destroying the entire LMIA point system. Because there are thousands of IT companies and many startups and many big companies that have genuine employees that they have sponsored through LMIAs. And a lot of those employees have not studied in Canada, or they might be highly experienced. So they're older, they're in their late 30s, they're in their 40s. So it is very important that the country should retain those people. But because of LMIA points going away, they will no longer have high enough score, and the country will lose a lot of very talented people who have a job offer, who have settled here, who have been working here. So personally, in my opinion, there are many different ways of addressing fraud, and the way you address fraud is not by destroying the system, but by fixing and changing and correcting the system. So that's a summary of the announcement about LMIAs. In the next several days and weeks, there will be lots more updates on this, and on this channel, we will share those updates. So make sure you like, share, and subscribe to this channel to stay updated. My name is Madhur Parashar. I'm a licensed Canadian immigration consultant. My contact information is in this video and in the description. If you need any help with your Canadian immigration applications, feel free to reach out for our paid immigration services.